So you may have heard about the Qantas data leak over the last couple of days. And basically what's happened is that hackers got hold of customer information, passport details, travel history, home addresses, and even personal phone numbers, and then dumped it on the dark web.
Hackers have reportedly released the personal data of more than 5 million Qantas customers onto the dark web after a ransom deadline passed yesterday afternoon.
Almost 6 million Qantas customers have been caught up in this data breach, with stolen personal details leaked online over the weekend.
There are reports this morning hackers have followed through on a threat to release the data of Qantas customers stolen in a cyber attack earlier this year.
Overnight, thousands of people had their private data leaked onto the internet without their consent. Now, it wasn't just Australians who got done. There's reports from Et Media and Deep Cut News that ex-presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden's details were in the leak, as well as our own Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. But the real story I want to talk about today isn't just that Qantas got hacked, it's about the government's new under-16 social media ban and what comes with it, such as the digital ID system. Both of these rely on the same privacy framework that failed to stop the Qantas breach. And the question is, what happens when that data isn't just your flight history, but your identity documents, social media accounts, and personal records? If a private company's systems can be breached, like we see regularly, could a government do a better job? Or could they be next? And what would that mean for the rest of us? My name is Josh and welcome to the West Report. Let's jump in. So the Australian government digital ID system is a national framework that lets people prove who they are online without repeatedly having to hand over full identity documents. So instead of handing over copies of your passport or driver's license every single time, you create a digital ID through an accredited provider like MyID. That provider then verifies your identity only once using official records. And then when you log into a participating service, it only confirms specific attributes, such as your age or name, rather than transferring all of that personal data to a new system. So the system itself is designed to limit data sharing and give users control and consent on what information is passed on. It's federated, meaning that there isn't just one central database. Instead, several trusted providers operate under strict privacy accreditation and cybersecurity standards, which is set by the Digital ID Act of 2024. While the Digital ID system limits data sharing, it still concentrates an enormous amount of power in one place: the government as both the identity provider and the gatekeeper. So in the near future, Australians may need to use this same ID to verify themselves on major internet services like Google, Facebook, TikTok, which effectively makes participation in the digital world dependent on your government issue ID. That means it wouldn't just be about logging onto Medicare or MyGov, but potentially every single online platform that requires proof of age or identity. And if the government has the power to grant that access, it would probably also have the power to revoke it. Now, the under-16 social media ban is meant to come in December, and we still don't know the finer details about it. It was passed in the Senate earlier this year, but to great opposition. And look, I can already hear people yelling in the comments, no, Anthony Albanese isn't Chairman Mao, but giving any government the technical ability to cut off someone's access to the internet sets a dangerous precedent. One that could quietly shift from convenience to control. In a large-scale breach, attackers wouldn't need millions of separate records, just the verification layer that connects all those systems. That means if one provider or verification key is compromised, it could cascade across all of these platforms. The same single sign-on convenience that makes digital ID appealing to some people also concentrates power and the risk into one place. And while the system isn't a central database, every participating provider holds sensitive personal data, from facial scans to passport numbers, making them potential points of failure. So here's the thing, right? It's easy to point fingers and yell at the government for building systems like digital ID, but to their credit, it's not mandatory currently like it is going to be in the UK. But what a lot of people don't realise is that we are already living in a version of this. Every time you sign in with Google, your passwords, logins, and email addresses are stored in one ecosystem. Your data, search history, and preferences are packaged and then sold back to you through ads, which is how Google makes their money. We've already normalised handing over our digital identities to private corporations. But these are the same corporations now being asked by the government to take responsibility for online verification and safety. Mass surveillance isn't just unique to China. Google does it, I would say, just as much. It's just under a different system where billionaires own the algorithm and profit from your data instead of the state. It's a sharp reminder that the same practices we are condemning in authoritarian regimes are in fact encouraged in big tech. It's just dressed up as convenience. Privacy versus tyranny isn't about government versus corporations. It's about those who hold the information and what they do with it, and if they're held accountable for misusing that data. Now, the Australian government is shifting the responsibility for online safety onto the tech giants themselves. They're expecting them to police age verification, not the government. Now, we've all seen those videos like in the UK where they can get past these age verifications by using like a mask bought at a store or some other way like a VPN. But at the same time, these tech giants are the ones that built this ecosystem in the first place. And when profit is on the line, the solutions have been slow or half-hearted or not even there. Google recently submitted to Parliament that imposing a social media ban for under 16s will be extremely difficult to enforce, trying to pass the buck. There's also word that Google is lobbying Donald Trump to step in and stop the Australian government from implementing its under 16 ban. These tech giants do not want the responsibility at the cost of their own profits. Now, by leaning on these platforms to fix the problem, the state is essentially asking the fox to guard the henhouse. It's hard to know the right solution here when there's a track record of misuse of our data by these big tech companies. So let's bring it back to Qantas, right? Who is actually at fault for your data ending up on the dark web? And will Qantas face any real consequences? So under the current Privacy Act, not really. There are no strong enforcement powers for fining corporations that lose customer data through hacking. Now in 2024, there was an amendment to the Privacy Act, which kind of went under the radar with little public attention. It only strengthened penalties for companies that mishandle data, meaning if they sold it, misused it, or failed to notify people about a breach straight away, which to Qantas's credit seems like they did. But if a hacker breaks in and steals it, that's still classed as an eligible data breach, not corporate negligence. Qantas is legally required to tell you that your information was stolen, but not to protect you from what happens next. And what happens if the government itself mishandles our data? I would argue that my Medicare and passport number is a bit more sensitive than my shopping habits or my watch history on YouTube. And that's kind of the real question here. The same laws that apply to, say, Qantas or Optus for letting your data get hacked also apply to public agencies. Even if a government database were to be compromised, say the one connected to the new digital ID, there's no automatic fine, there's no mandatory compensation, and there's no independent body with teeth to hold them accountable. The result is a system where data breaches are probably inevitable because it will only take one hack for your information to be out there. So before we rush into digital ID being mandatory for online use, before we centralize even more personal information under the same weak privacy protections, we should kind of ask, if Qantas, Optus and Medibank can't keep your data safe, why do we trust the government to do the same? What protections can they guarantee us as citizens, and what could they be reprimanded for if it's been mishandled? Because if the last few years have shown us anything, it's that in Australia, privacy reform is always reactive to some big event, instead of proactive. By the way, thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Josh. If you'd like to support what we do here, you can jump over to our Patreon at patreon.com/thewest-report, or jump over to our website and look at the journalists that we hire and employ to help write these stories.